Hey, what's up? We're going to be going through these three icons up here at the top, which are the focus tools, as well as this screen, which is the focus to group screen. If you're looking for other stuff, just click around and you should find a video talking about them sooner or later. So anyway, for this focus example, let's just set up like the same thing. We're going to go super easy and just do three different squares. You can make them all blue. You can make them all a different color. I'm just going to keep them blue just to be easy for this example. So basically, these three tools are a way for you to kind of focus on what you're working for. And as a side note to that, you get a huge performance boost because After Effects doesn't always have to render all of the layers in your timeline at once. So you can actually work with stuff in a more focused way, both in terms of like CPU performance and then also just visually. So let's take a look at this focus to selected tool. Basically, it means whatever you have selected, you could like isolate, solo, or focus. So you get this little focus indicator that kind of shows you're focused, and then you also get this timeline marker that also just says you're focused to selection. And then when you click this button, you return focus like you didn't touch anything with the project. So if you just click like the second layer and you focus to selected, what this is basically doing is it's automatically shying all of the other layers, disabling all the other layers and locking the other layers, and then turning on this shy group. So they're like everything's hidden, and when everything's hidden like this, After Effects doesn't know it needs to render anything. So you basically can like work with stuff really quick. You can add keyframes, you can add other like layers. So I could even add a fourth square here. And then when I return focus, it's just getting added to my composition, but it's not like breaking anything. This is a non-destructive kind of tool in terms of what you have going in your project. So if you selected two layers and you wanted to focus to them, you would have this kind of look and you could return focus. So these are the kind of simple focus tools. And if you click this icon over here, we're going to open the focus to group screen. So the first thing you're going to notice is it has two of the very similar tools, and they actually work exactly the same as the ones on the home screen, except they have this little box that can kind of extend the functionality of the tools. And then you also have some grayed out options, which just means you currently can't use them, but they will light up later. So basically, if you change any of the options on this screen, the options here will not be affected at all, so you don't need to worry. These are always going to work the same. These tools you can kind of change a little bit. So basically, you can focus to selected just like before. You can return focus. If you don't have any of the layers focused, you can actually focus to kind of like this isolated view where all of your layers are hidden, and then you could like work on a whole other component of your animation and then just return focus and pull all of that back into what you were working on. So these two options here are for like the focus type you want to use. And what that means is if you disabled the timeline, you're basically saying like, I only want to have this tool focus to what's in my composition viewer. So if I clicked a layer and I clicked focus to selected, it's going to focus the viewer, but I'm still going to be able to see all of the layers. And then if I return focus, all of the layers are going to be re-enabled. And likewise, I could focus to just the timeline and still see all of my project. So this option is actually really helpful if you're ever working on a super complex animation with a lot of stuff. And like, you know how eventually you just have like way too many layers, and especially when they all have keyframes, it just gets really difficult to start to see what's really going on. So what you could do is like in all these huge groups, you could like grab a couple of them, focus, and then you're just going to have to worry about these keyframes, but you're still going to see your whole project and be able to like animate in it. So then you just return focus and you have exactly what you started with. So I think this amount of layers is just kind of ridiculous. So I'll just Command Z a couple times and we'll go back to our three layer example, and I'll turn this option back on. So honestly, these focus types, they're helpful. I don't use them all the time, but if you need them, they are there. So let's look at some of our other options here, and right now they're grayed out. So in order to kind of use the other tools, we need something called a group. So this is a label or tag that you create, and when you select layers, you're able to create a group name. So I'm going to call these one our small squares, even though they're all the same size, and we'll grab this one and we'll just type bad square. We'll keep this one out of the group. When you press enter, it's just added to our little list here, and then if we wanted another group with all of these squares, we'll just add this group. So we're going to get a little counter next to each of these group names here. You're going to get 2, meaning you have 2 layers in that group. You have 1 in this group, and you have 3 layers in this group. So now we can basically not have to worry about selecting our layers, and since they're all assigned to these groups, we could focus basically to the groups or manipulate them in some ways. So you can see now when we have these labels selected, and you can also select multiple labels at once just holding command, or you can click this bar on the left side to highlight or all of the tags, or disable all of the tags. So basically when you have tags selected, so I'll just have this bad square one selected for right now, we're going to have these other options here. So what this means is you can do stuff with that group. So this one means you can select the group, and you're going to see I've selected the layer that is the bad square. I can grab these small squares, and even though I don't know which ones were the small squares, I could select those layers and work with them. So then you have one to like hide or show the layers. You could unselect the layers. They don't have to be selected to work with them anymore. You could lock the layers. You could shy the layers. You could select the layers when they're locked. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff just working with these kind of labels. So if I wanted to like lock this, all of the squares, and then maybe draw some other animation over the top and then return focus, that doesn't matter because I've worked with the groups independently. So these are kind of like other options. So I could then like unlock the group like this. So additionally on this, you have these other little sidebar options. I'll delete this weird little path I drew. These other little options mean you could add or subtract layers from different group names. So basically like this bad square, let's see which one the bad square is. So the bad square is this first one. We need it to have a buddy. So I'll select its buddy layer, shape layer 2, I guess. I'll just click this little plus button, and you're going to see that this little counter went up, meaning I now have 2 bad squares. So I could grab both of the squares. I could hide both of the squares. Again, very simple functions. So what gets really cool about this is you can then have this option called focus to group. So that means you could grab these groups without even having stuff selected and just use basically the focus tool, like focus to selected or return focused worked just with labels. So I can grab multiple labels at once, focus to group, focus to selected, return focus. I can grab my bad squares and only focus the timeline, focus to group, and then return focus. This is just all a very easy way to work with the composition. So there's one other option to kind of cover here. And you're going to see we have 3 group names here. So when I close it, you're going to see that on my focus screen, I now have a little counter that shows I have 3 kind of groups that exist in this composition. So you're actually able to save and hand off projects like this, and the counter will automatically pull up like what groups exist. So if I created like another composition here, and we'll just create a couple quick layers. So I'll just make 2 layers. Not really worry about them, and I will add just one quick group name. I'll call this label 1. All right, so we can focus to that if we wanted to, and I could close it. You're going to see I am focused to the label 1. I know that is my marker. I have the focused indicator, which is a guide layer, so it again doesn't get rendered or anything if I was in a different comp. When I click back into composition 1, you're going to see our counter goes up to 3. So I have these 3 groups here. And yeah, it's just an easy way to hand off projects because you kind of know how many groups are in certain things, and you can also tell when things are focused or unfocused. So working with complex projects with just a little bit more clarity.